Welcome back to the deep dive. We take complex source material, prep guides, all that dense stuff, and, well, we boil it down so you can get informed fast.
Yeah, gets you right up to speed.
Exactly. And today, our mission is pretty specific and definitely professional. We're diving into the FTCE Exceptional Student Education K-12 exam. That's the 061.
A big one for Florida
For
educators.
sure. And our goal isn't just, listing topics. We want to give you the structure, the strategy, how to focus your study on what really matters to pass. Think of this as your game plan shortcut.
And this test, it's the subject area exam if you're aiming for that Professional Florida Educator Certificate, specifically in Exceptional Student Education, or ESE.
Right.
It's specialized. It demands more than general teaching chops. You need to know the law, specific instructional techniques, complex behavior strategies, the whole package.
Okay, let's zoom out for a sec. People hear FTCE battery, and it sounds intimidating. Where does this ESE K-12 exam, the 061, fit in?
Good question. So the FTCE, the Florida Teacher Certification Examinations, it's this whole system mandated by state law.
Okay.
To get fully certified professionally, you basically have to pass three main parts. First, the general knowledge test, that's your basic academic skills.
Got it.
Second, the professional education test that covers teaching methods, pedagogy.
Uh-huh.
And third, the subject area exam. And that's where the ESE K-12, the 061 comes in. It's the test that proves, your stuff in this specific field.
So if ESE is your goal for that professional certificate, 061 is the gate you have to pass through. Who exactly is this test aimed at?
Well, pretty much anyone wanting that K-12 ESE specialization on their certificate, but it's important to know the edges here.
Okay.
Florida actually has separate tests for really specific categories. Think hearing impaired, speech language impaired, visually impaired. If you're going for one of those super specialized areas, you'll take a different exam.
Ah, okay. Good distinction.
Yeah. But for most ESE teachers working across the K-12 grades, the 061 is the one.
That sounds like it could take a while, getting all three parts done. What if someone gets hired but hasn't passed everything yet? Is there a way to start teaching?
Yes, there is. Florida offers a pathway. If you're qualified, you can get a temporary certificate.
Okay.
That lets you teach for up to 3 years while you work on passing all the required exams, including this big one, the subject area exam.
3 years seems like a decent window.
It is, but you absolutely have to stick to that timeline. If you don't pass within those 3 years, that temporary certificate expires.
And you could lose your job.
Exactly. The pressure's definitely real.
Yeah.
You need to plan ahead, start preparing now.
Right. Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty of the exam itself. The technical specs, format, timing, scoring, all that good stuff. What are we looking at on test day?
All right. First off, it's entirely computer-based, no paper and pencil here.
Okay, good to know. How many questions?
You're looking at 120 scoreable multiple-choice questions.
120. And the time limit?
2.5 hours total.
Okay, 120 questions in 150 minutes. That's, what, about 1 minute and 15 seconds per question, if they average it out.
Roughly, yeah. But you can't think of them as simple recall questions where 75 seconds is plenty.
Ah, so they're more complex.
Definitely. They're designed to assess, higher-level professional thinking, logical reasoning, critical analysis, comparing different approaches, making judgments about real situations with exceptional students.
So it's not just what does IDEA stand for? It's more like what's the best way to apply this principle in this classroom scenario?
Precisely. You have to move beyond just knowing the definition to applying the best practice. That takes more thought, more time per item.
Which brings us back to pacing. That 150 minutes for 120 complex questions. What's the strategic takeaway?
Pacing is everything. You absolutely cannot afford to get stuck on one question. Because they require analysis, that time flies.
I bet.
You have to be efficient. Practice managing your time during your prep. It's non-negotiable.
Okay, makes sense. Let's talk scoring. This is often where test strategy really comes into play. How does it work, and what's the key insight?
So the scoring mechanics are pretty straightforward on the surface. Each of those 120 questions is worth 1 raw point.
Okay.
Your total raw score is just the number you get right. Simple enough. But here's the absolute crucial part, the thing you must remember.
Yeah.
There is 0 penalty for wrong answers. They don't deduct points if you get one wrong.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's huge. So guessing is always better than leaving something blank.
Always. Never leave an answer blank. It completely changes your approach, especially if you're running out of time or unsure.
So what's the magic number then? What score do you actually need to pass?
The official requirement is a scaled score of at least 200. On your score report, it just says pass.
200 scaled score. What does that mean in terms of raw points? How many questions correct is that?
Good question. So based on the standards set back in fall 2017, the passing percentage is 71%.
71%.
Right. And for a 120-question test, that translates to needing 85 correct answers. 85 items right get you a pass.
85 out of 120. That feels like a concrete target. But I assume you wouldn't want to aim for exactly 85 when you're practicing.
Absolutely not. You need a buffer. You need a cushion for nerves, for unexpectedly tricky questions.
Right.
We strongly recommend aiming for, say, 75% correct consistently on your practice test. That's 90 items.
Okay, 90.
If you're hitting 90 or more regularly in practice under timed conditions, you've built in that margin for error, you can go into the real test feeling much more confident. Aim high.
Good advice. All right, logistics. When and where can people take this test? Is it offered frequently?
Yes, very frequently. It's available year-round, usually Monday through Saturday except holidays, by appointment.
And location.
Plenty of options. There are over 30 sites within Florida itself. But importantly, it's also offered at over 250 sites across the U.S. and its territories.
Oh, that's great for people moving into Florida.
Exactly. Makes it much more accessible if you're relocating.
Now, what if someone follows the advice, aims for 90, but, has a bad day and doesn't hit the 85 mark on the first try? What's the retake situation?
It happens, and it's definitely not the end of the road. Many great teachers take certification tests more than once. The policy is pretty clear. If you don't pass, you have to wait 31 calendar days before you can retake it.
Okay, a month, basically.
Yeah. You do have to re-register and pay the fee again. But there's no limit on how many times you can retake it. So persistence, analyzing what went wrong, and focused studying are key.
You mentioned analyzing.
Yeah.
What about score verification? Is that an option?
It is, but only under very specific circumstances. You have to score really close to passing within 10 scale score points below the 200 mark. So if your score was between 190 and 199.
Ah, okay. Very narrow window.
Very narrow. If you fall in that range, you can request a score verification session. They'll review the scoring process to check for errors. Though honestly, with computer-based testing, scoring errors are extremely rare. But it's there if you're agonizingly close.
Got it. Okay, let's pivot to the core of the exam, the content itself. You mentioned 6 competencies. These were developed by educators in the field, right?
That's right. Teams of teachers, administrators, ESE specialists, they determined what's essential knowledge for a beginning ESE teacher in Florida.
And critically, these 6 areas aren't weighted equally on the test, are they?
Definitely not. And understanding those weights is your study guide, essentially. It tells you where to invest the most time and energy. Some areas are much bigger than others.
All right, let's break them down, starting with the heavyweight champion. Competency 1.
Okay, competency 1. Knowledge of foundations of exceptional student education. This one is huge. It accounts for 24% of your score, nearly a quarter of the test.
24%. Wow. Okay, so what's packed into this foundational competency? It sounds like the legal and ethical bedrock.
It absolutely is. It starts with the non-negotiables, federal and state laws,
Right.
primarily the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act idea and the specific Florida statutes that govern ESE.
So you need to know the laws inside and out.
And apply them. You need to be able to look at student characteristics and determine eligibility based on the criteria defined in those laws. Which disability categories apply, what are the requirements?
So not just knowing the acronyms, but understanding the practical application, the criteria.
Exactly, and it goes beyond law. This competency also requires you to compare typical and atypical development across all domains: physical, cognitive, language, social, emotional, through all the K-12 years.
Spotting potential red flags for referral.
Precisely. Identifying those developmental markers that suggest a student might need evaluation for ESE services.
And the cornerstone document for students who qualify, the IEP, must be central here.
Absolutely critical. One of the key skills, Skill 5, is all about applying your knowledge to develop individual educational plans, IEPs. That's the federal requirement. But also educational plans, EPs, which Florida often uses for gifted students, and transition IEPs, which are required for older students preparing for life after high school.
Yeah.
You need to know who should be on the team, the timelines, how to write measurable goals, the whole process.
And the goal of all this paperwork and process isn't just compliance, right? It's about access.
Yes, exactly. Skill 6 looks at how system-wide supports help students with exceptionalities access the general education curriculum. Things like co-teaching models, universal design for learning, specialized curricula. How do we make sure they're included?
Another big piece here sounds like collaboration, especially considering Florida's diverse population.
Huge. And it's not just being nice, it's about effective reciprocal consultation. Skill 7 specifically targets working effectively with all stakeholders.
Parents, gen ed teachers.
Parents, general staff, administrators, community agencies, and it explicitly calls out competence in collaborating with families from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, recognizing their perspectives, ensuring they're true partners.
That partnership idea extends to the classroom team too, doesn't it? Like paraprofessionals.
It does. Skill 8 is about effectively coaching and supporting paraprofessionals, tutors, volunteers. ESE teachers often lead these teams, so you need to know how to delegate appropriately, provide guidance, supervise instruction delivered by others.
Okay, one last really important concept in competency 1, disproportionality. What does the test expect you to know about that?
This is a critical awareness piece. The exam requires you to identify factors linked to disproportionality. That means understanding why certain groups, often based on race, ethnicity, or language, are overrepresented in some disability categories, or face discipline more often.
So knowing the what and the why.
Right. Knowing it can stem from things like biased referrals, assessments that aren't culturally responsive, systemic issues, and being ready to address it. It's about equity and ethical practice, really moving beyond just basic compliance.
Wow, okay. That's a packed 24%. Deep legal, ethical, and systemic knowledge required there. Let's shift gears. What's the next biggest chunk?
That would be competency 5, knowledge of multiple literacies and communication skills. This one comes in at 22%, so almost as big as foundations.
22% on literacies and communication. Where does this start? Basic language.
Yeah, exactly. It kicks off with understanding typical language development and the building blocks of language phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, pragmatics, all those linguistic components.
The technical side of language.
Yeah. And that knowledge lets you tackle the next skill, distinguishing characteristics of various communication disorders and understanding how they impact a student's learning and social interactions.
For students who struggle significantly with communication, technology can be key, right? Assistive tech.
Absolutely. Skill 3 is about identifying appropriate assistive technology, AT, and alternative communication systems, AAC. You need to know the options, from low-tech picture boards to high-tech speech-generating devices, and how to match them to student needs to ensure they have a voice and can access the curriculum.
Makes sense. Then the competency seems to dive heavily into reading instruction.
Oh yeah, this is core ESE work. You need to know the typical sequence of how reading develops. And critically, you need to know specialized instructional methods for students struggling with things like phonological processing, manipulating sounds in spoken language. That's often ground zero for reading difficulties.
So explicit, evidence-based reading strategies.
Exactly. Skills 6 and 7 are all about applying evidence-based methods to teach phonics, word recognition, fluency, and comprehension. And not just in reading class, how to boost literacy skills across all subjects, like science and social studies.
It's not just reading and language, though, right? This competency is called multiple literacies.
Right. It also covers higher-order thinking. Skill 8 requires knowing strategies to foster critical thinking, executive functions like planning, organizing, working memory, and metacognition, which is teaching students how to learn and monitor their own understanding.
And the other core academic areas.
Yep. The competency wraps up with effective methods for teaching writing, the foundations and the process, and also applying evidence-based strategies for teaching mathematical skills, from basic numeracy to problem solving, across the grades.
Okay, another really substantial section at 22%. Moving on, competency 3 is almost tied, weight-wise.
Right. Competency 3. Knowledge of instructional practices in exceptional student education. This one's at 21%, very close behind.
So if C1 is the why, the law, and C5 is the what, the content, like literacy, C3 sounds like the how, the actual teaching methods.
That's a great way to put it. This section is all about the delivery of instruction. It starts with choosing your methods wisely. Skill 1 is about selecting reliable, evidence-based practices and interventions. You have to justify your teaching with data, not just gut feelings.
Makes sense. And then applying those methods based on who you're teaching.
Exactly. Skill 2 is about applying instructional approaches that meet individual student needs while still aligning with grade-level standards. Differentiation is key here.
You mentioned differentiation. There's another key ESE term in Skill 3, generalization. Can you unpack that one? Why is it so important?
Generalization. It's absolutely vital. It means a student can take a skill they learned in one specific place, like your classroom,
Right.
and use it successfully in different situations with different people, different materials, in different settings, like at home or on a job site.
Right.
If they can only do it with you, it's not truly mastered.
Hmm.
Skill 3 tests if you know strategies to help students transfer skills to the real world.
Okay, ensuring learning isn't just stuck in the classroom. What about the overall structure for delivering support? MTSS comes up here.
Yes, Skill 4 covers the multi-tiered system of supports, MTSS. You need to know the characteristics and purpose of the 3 tiers: Tier 1 core instruction, Tier 2 supplemental support, and Tier 3 intensive interventions, especially as they apply to reading and math. How does instruction get more intense as you move up the tiers?
Got it. And this competency also covers those day-to-day classroom management tools like how you group students.
It does. Skills 5 and 6 cover applying techniques for differentiating instruction, providing accommodations, changing how kids learn, and modifications, changing what they're expected to learn. Big difference there.
Definitely.
And also using flexible grouping strategies effectively. Grouping kids based on skills, needs, or the specific learning target.
Finally, what about students with the most significant needs?
Skill 8 specifically addresses analyzing specialized instructional approaches for students with significant disabilities. This often involves teaching functional life skills, using alternative curricula, focusing on independence in daily living.
Okay, that covers the big 3 competencies. Let's move into the smaller but still essential sections, competency 2.
Right, competency 2. Knowledge of assessment and evaluation. This one's weighted at 13%. It covers everything related to collecting and using student data.
So starting with the basics, why assess?
Yep. Skill 1 is about knowing the purposes and types of assessments. Screening, diagnostic, progress monitoring, summative. When do you use which tool and why?
And I see legal and ethical principles pop up again here.
Always. Skill 2 is about applying legal requirements and ethical principles to assessment. Using non-biased tools, ensuring tests are given by qualified people, getting parental consent for initial evaluations.
Yeah.
All crucial compliance points.
Then there's some technical stuff, reliability and validity. Quick definition.
Sure. Reliability is about consistency. Does the test give similar results over time? Validity is about accuracy. Does the test actually measure what it says it measures?
Got it.
You also need to know the difference between norm reference tests, which compare a student to a larger group, and criterion reference tests, which compare a student to a specific standard, like the Florida standards.
And how does statewide testing fit in?
That's skill 5. Knowing the requirements for participation in Florida's statewide assessments, including which accommodations are allowed and when waivers or exemptions might apply.
And finally, using all that data.
Right. Skill 6 is about interpreting and applying data from all these assessments, formal and informal, to figure out student needs and track their progress. Data-driven decision-making.
Okay, 13% on assessment. Next up, competency 4.
Competency 4. Knowledge of the positive behavioral support process. This is 12% of the exam. All about understanding and managing student behavior effectively and ethically.
Positive behavior support, or PBS. What are the key elements here?
It really focuses on prevention and intervention. Skill 1 covers choosing appropriate prevention strategies, those universal supports for everyone, and intensive intervention strategies for students with significant behavioral challenges.
So, Tier 1 and Tier 3 behavior supports.
Exactly. And Skill 2 is about understanding the core concepts of PBS, that behavior communicates a need,
Yeah.
that it serves a function, and that we should teach replacement behaviors.
And the legal side of discipline for students with disabilities must be huge here.
Absolutely massive. Skill 3 requires you to analyze the legal and ethical issues around discipline. Think manifestation determination reviews, rules about suspension and expulsion for students with IEPs. You have to know the procedures cold. It's a high-stakes area.
Definitely. And the main tool for figuring out why challenging behavior happens? The FBA.
The functional behavior assessment. Critically important. Skill 5 covers understanding the essential parts of an FBA and how to collect data for interviews, observations, maybe even testing hypotheses.
And the point of the FBA is?
To figure out the function of the behavior so you can design a behavior intervention plan, a BIP. Skill 4 involves interpreting FBA data to develop that BIP, aiming to increase positive behavior and track if the plan is actually working.
Okay, 12% on behavior. That leaves one competency.
The last one, competency 6. Knowledge of the transition process. This is the smallest section at 8%. But don't let the size fool you. It's incredibly important.
Transition planning. This is all about life after high school, right?
Entirely. It's focused on post-secondary success. Skill 1 involves knowing about career development programs and technical education options.
Using assessments to guide that planning.
Yes. Skill 2 is key, using results from transition assessments, interest inventories, aptitude tests to work with students and families to set realistic goals for college, careers, independent living. It's a collaborative process.
I noticed terms like self-determination and self-advocacy here. Those seem really important.
They are absolutely central to transition. Skill 3 is about selecting teaching strategies that help students develop self-determination, making their own choices, managing their lives, and self-advocacy, speaking up for their needs and rights. These are arguably the most critical skills for success after they leave the K-12 system.
Empowering students to take control.
Exactly. And finally, Skill 4 is about knowing the resources out there. Identifying and comparing community resources and strategies that help students function independently in college, at home, in the community, and at work. Connecting them with agencies like vocational rehabilitation, adult services.
Okay, that covers the 6 competencies, 45 skills in total. That's a lot to master. So how do you tackle studying for this efficiently? Where do you even start?
Right. This is where strategy becomes crucial. And our recommended starting point might sound a bit backwards at first.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
We strongly advise you to take Practice Test 1 online using the REA Study Center that comes with the prep book before you crack open the review chapters.
Take a full practice test cold, without studying first. Why?
Because your time is precious. Doing that first practice test gives you an immediate diagnostic score report. It pinpoints exactly which of those 45 skills are your strengths and, more importantly, where your weaknesses lie.
So it personalizes your study plan right from the get-go.
Precisely. Why waste hours reviewing, say, behavior strategies if you aced Competency 4 when you actually bombed the foundation section? This diagnostic approach forces you to focus your energy where it's needed most.
That makes a lot of sense. It's efficient. And knowing these prep materials are up to date with the current Florida standards gives confidence in that diagnostic feedback.
Exactly. This edition reflects the standards from fall 2017 onwards. So, okay, let's map out the study cycle based on that initial diagnostic.
So you've taken practice test 1, you have your report showing weak areas. What's step 1?
Step 1 is targeted study. You zero in on the review chapters and sections that correspond only to the competencies and skills where you scored poorly on that first test.
Don't just read the whole book cover to cover.
Right. Be focused. And while you're studying those weak areas, use active techniques. Don't just passively read. Highlight key terms, especially legal ones. Take notes in your own words. Connect it back to stuff you learned in college courses if you can. Make it stick.
Okay, focused, active study on weak areas. Then what? How do you know if it worked?
Step 2. Check your mastery. After you feel you've really reviewed those weak spots, you take Practice Test 2, again online. This serves as a progress check and gets you used to the testing conditions again.
And look at the score report from Test 2.
Yep. See where you improved. See if any new weak areas popped up or if some old ones are still lingering. If you still have sections below your target score, remember that 75% or 90 items goal, you loop back to Step 1 for those specific topics. Restudy, then maybe retest later. It's an iterative process.
Gotcha. Cycle through study and testing. And you keep emphasizing doing the practice tests online. Why is that so critical?
Because the real FTCE exam is computer-based. Taking the practice tests online replicates that experience exactly. You get used to the interface, clicking answers, flagging questions you want to come back to, managing the on-screen timer.
Simulates the real deal.
Perfectly. Plus, you get that instant automated scoring and the diagnostic breakdown. Trying to do that accurately with a paper test is much harder and less precise. Use the online tests.
Okay, solid strategy. Let's give folks a possible timeline. We suggest a 6-week schedule in the book, but people can adjust that, right?
Absolutely. Condense it or stretch it based on your own needs and timeline. But the key is consistency. So a possible plan. Week 1, take Practice Test 1 online, timed, no distractions, get that diagnostic, review the explanations for questions you missed, set that 90-item goal.
Then weeks 2 and 3.
That's your deep study time. Focus intensely on the review chapters, covering your weak areas identified in Week 1. And seriously, commit the time, at least a couple of hours a day if possible. Don't try to cram this. It won't work for an exam this comprehensive.
Okay. What about Week 4?
Week 4 is about consolidation. Reread the notes you took. Refresh your memory on all 6 competencies and how they connect. Maybe pull out old college textbooks or notes for areas you're still shaky on. Pull it all together.
Then Week 5 is another check-in.
Yep. Take Practice Test 2 online, again under realistic test conditions. Analyze that score report meticulously. Go back and intensively review any topics you still missed, using the answer explanations as your guide.
And the final week, week 6.
Week 6 is your final check and confidence builder. Maybe retake practice test 1 or even test 2 again to see how much you've improved overall. Do one last targeted review of any lingering problem spots. If you're hitting that 90-plus mark confidently this week, you should be ready.
That sounds like a solid, structured plan. Now let's talk about test day itself and the lead-up. We talked about simulating conditions during practice. Why is that so important beyond just getting used to the computer?
It's about building mental stamina and managing anxiety. The real test is 150 minutes of intense focus on complex problems. Practicing under those same conditions, quiet room, no phone, just you and the screen for 2.5 hours trains your brain to maintain that focus.
Builds endurance.
Exactly. So you get to the real test, it feels familiar, less stressful, you've done it before.
Okay. What about the practical stuff right before test day? Logistics.
Absolutely crucial. Check your admission ticket online about 24 hours beforehand. Make sure the time, date, location haven't changed unexpectedly.
Good tip.
And the biggest potential pitfall, identification. You must bring 2 forms of valid ID. One needs to be a government-issued photo ID with your name and signature that looks like you usually driver's license or passport.
2 forms, 1 photo ID. Got it.
If your ID is expired or doesn't match your registration name exactly or the photo's ancient, they can turn you away. And you forfeit your test fee. Double-check your ID requirements.
Okay, noted. Now for the actual test-taking strategies, those little tips that can make a difference on the day. Tip 1.
Tip 1. Know the format inside and out. Use those online practice tests so you're completely comfortable with the computer interface, the directions, how to flag questions, how the timer looks. Less time worrying about the how, more brain power for the what. Reduces anxiety, saves precious seconds.
Makes sense. Tip 2 seems geared towards those judgment-based questions we talked about.
Yes. Tip 2, read all the answer choices. This is critical for questions asking for the best or most appropriate approach. Often you'll see 2 options that seem plausible.
Plausible, but maybe not the best.
Exactly. You have to read A, B, C, and D carefully to find the one that is the most accurate, most legally sound, most effective according to best practices. Don't just grab the first answer that looks okay.
Good discipline to have. Tip 3 is about narrowing it down.
Tip 3. Use the process of elimination. If you're unsure about a question, start by actively crossing out the answer choices you know are wrong. If you can get rid of even 1 or 2, your odds of guessing correctly improve dramatically. If you narrow it down to 2, you've got a 50-50 shot, much better than 25%.
Smart. Which leads us right back to that crucial scoring rule.
Tip 4, and maybe the most important, use the 0 penalty rule. Never, ever leave an answer blank. Since you don't lose points for wrong answers, leaving 1 blank guarantees you get 0 points for it. A guess, even a random one, gives you at least a chance. Fill in every single bubble.
Even if you're guessing wildly at the end.
Absolutely. In the last minute, if you have 5 questions left, just pick a letter and fill them all in. It's always better than leaving them empty.
Okay. Tip 5 is about that clock again.
Tip 5, manage your time relentlessly. Keep an eye on the timer. Aim for that rough average of 1 minute to 1:15 per question. Don't get bogged down. If a question is stumping you after 90 seconds or so,
Don't keep wrestling with it.
no. Flag it using the testing software feature. Make your best educated guess right then and there, using tip 4, and move on. If you have time left at the end of the section, you can go back to your flagged questions for a second look. But don't sacrifice later questions by lingering too long on one difficult one.
Good strategy. Tip 6 is about reading the question itself carefully.
Critically important. Tip 6, watch the language. Pay super close attention to keywords in the question stem, especially limiters or negatives. Words like initial, best, most, but also not least, except required, necessary.
How can those trip you up?
Well, a question asking for the least effective strategy requires you to pick a bad answer, not a good one. If you miss that word least, you'll pick the opposite of what they want. Read carefully. Underline those keywords mentally.
Got it. And the last tip, tip 7, is about managing the inevitable stress.
Yeah. Tip 7, manage anxiety. Test day is stressful. If you feel yourself getting overwhelmed, mind racing, or just freezing up, stop. Just for a moment. Close your eyes. Take a slow, deep breath or 2.
Does that really help?
It does. Getting oxygen to your brain helps concentration. A brief pause, like 5-10 seconds, can break that panic cycle, help you reset and refocus. Don't be afraid to take that micro break if you need it.
Excellent tips. Okay, let's wrap this up. We've really done a deep dive today into the FTCE ESE K-12 exam. We laid out the structure, 120 questions, 2.5 hours, that 71% or 85-item pass mark. And the golden rule, never leave a question blank.
Right. And strategically, we pinpointed the heavy hitters Competency 1 foundations at 24% and Competency 5 literacies at 22%. Focusing your study there gives the biggest payoff. We also laid out that crucial diagnostic study plan, test 1 first, then targeted review.
And passing this exam, it's that final professional step towards certification, towards a really challenging but also incredibly rewarding career working with exceptional students. The knowledge you gain studying isn't just for the test, is it?
Not at all. It's the foundation of your practice.
Yeah.
Think about it. Everything we covered, from the legal requirements in IDA to transition planning for post-secondary life.
It directly impacts students.
Directly. So consider this as a final thought. We talked about specific skills like promoting self-determination and self-advocacy in Competency 6 or addressing disproportionality in Competency 1.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, what's the real-world impact of you mastering that specific knowledge on an actual student's life, maybe as soon as next week? How does your deep understanding of IDA empower a parent in an IEP meeting? How does your skill in FBA change a student's chance to succeed in a general education class?
That's the real goal, the true measure of being prepared.
That's it. So start your preparation, be confident. You're already on the path to becoming an effective, knowledgeable, and passionate ESE leader in the classroom.
Well said. That's all the time we have for today's deep dive. We'll see you next time.